Hi book friends, welcome to Biblio Happy Hour, a podcast about bookstores and everything bookish. I'm your host, Victoria Wood. In today's show, we'll be talking to Gretchen Treu from A Room of One's Own bookstore located in Madison, Wisconsin. Today's episode is brought to you by Biblio Finder, a new online directory for independent bookstores. They also list book clubs and bookish-related events. If you love the show and what we're doing over on Biblio Finder, and you want to help us support local independent bookstores, visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/bibliofinder. When you become a patron, you're helping us to list, advertise, and promote local independent bookstores worldwide. You'll also get perks such as access to our full podcast episodes, behind-the-scenes content, an opportunity to send in questions, get discount codes, shout-outs, plus more. That's patreon.com/bibliofinder. We will also leave a link in the show details. Before we get started with today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a rating and review. When you do this, you're helping us to reach a larger audience, and it is one way you can help us to put independent bookstores at the forefront and make Biblio Finder plus the show a success. Alrighty guys, let's talk with our guest. Gretchen, thank you so much for coming on the show, and welcome to Biblio Happy Hour.
Thank you so much for having me, Victoria. I'm Gretchen, and I'm with A Room of One's Own, as you said, in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yep, we're so happy to have you here. Before we get started, real quick, are you a coffee or a tea person?
I am a coffee person.
Oh, are you drinking anything right now? Coffee, tea, water?
I shouldn't be drinking coffee this late in the afternoon, but I am.
Don't feel bad, me too. I have a cup right with me.
Good.
Alrighty, so tell us about your bookstore, where you're located, and share a bit about your town.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Madison is the capital of Wisconsin. We are, the joke is that we're 20 square miles surrounded by reality, so we're the kind of liberal oasis in the middle of Wisconsin. We're home to both the government seat and also the largest university in the state,
right.
The University of Wisconsin-Madison. Our bookstore started about 44 years ago.
Wow.
1975, yeah. It started as a feminist bookstore, a really small kind of hole-in-the-wall place where all the books were face out because they couldn't afford very many of them.
That's
and it
interesting.
was founded, I think, around the same time as the Women's Studies Department at the university, so they were very closely aligned.
Right.
We're about 3 or 4 blocks away from the university.
Okay.
And we've been selling course materials to students that whole time. We still do it. We started as a feminist bookstore with a strong, lesbian and gay studies section and women's studies, women's interest, very political, liberal kind of place.
Right.
Yeah, and I started working here about 12 years ago, I think now.
Wow.
Yeah, there used to be a coffee shop inside the bookstore at its old location, and I basically was a little baby gay who needed some sort of safe haven, so I would go and hang out in the coffee shop, and eventually they gave me a job working there, and then the minute a bookstore job opened up, they were like, you should really apply for this, because I've been a book person my whole life.
Right.
So, yeah, I've just kind of worked my way up. I was a, part-timer for a few years, and then I became a full-time staff, and I was the events.
Well, that's amazing.
Quite a while. I'm sorry?
No, I was saying that's pretty amazing just how you got involved in the coffee shop and then the bookstore, and now you're here. I mean, that's just a really amazing story, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Our owners, there were 2 owners when I took over, one of whom was one of the original founders, and one had joined, I think, about 25 years ago or so.
Right.
And they had done a really great job of building up this little bookstore. They were very scrappy, even during economic downturns and the rise of the internet and Amazon and
of course
the rise of big box stores and everything. They've just kind of held on with some pretty shrewd business decisions they've made over the years and trying to be agile in a changing marketplace and stuff like that. So,
that's amazing.
About 8 years ago, I think we moved into our current space. So we're one of the actually largest independent bookstores in the country in terms of square footage.
Right.
So, and we're used books and new books, and we're a little bit more of a general interest bookstore now too. Like we've just kind of
evolved
grown to embrace that like lack that Madison had of not having a really big, good general bookstore.
Right.
So we cater to a lot of people, but the feminist focus and LGBT focus is still our heart, and we're trying to be really careful and cognizant of being more intersectional and hiring more staff of color and just providing platforms for authors of color and voices of more marginalized communities than even we've historically been able to support. So.
No, that's amazing. No, I'm really happy. I'm really happy to know that you stuck to your core somewhat, because when I first saw A Room of One's Own, I immediately thought Virginia Woolf. Immediately. Yep. And because I love Virginia Woolf, I'm a big fan of her work. I collect her books in addition to just reading them. You know, I see beautiful edition, I want it. So I can see where the whole, you know, feminist bookstore ties in with the name because of that bit of work. So I found that to be really, really interesting.
Oh, thank you. Very happy to keep the name.
Oh no, of course.
And, you know, a lot of people.
No, that's great, and I'm happy you guys chose to keep the name. But just a quick question. When you decided to really get involved in the bookstore and the book industry, for lack of better description, what was the reaction from your family and your friends? You know,
are you crazy?
Right.
I mean, honestly, really, because it's me, everyone was like, well, of course you are. Like, I've always been the book nerd. I was an English major and women's studies minor in college. And
wow.
I worked in libraries and bookstores, and I've interned in publishing, and I've done, I've been all over the book world. So, in at least, dipping my toes in ways, kind of. But I really love being a bookseller. I think I'm pretty good at it most of the time.
Okay. So you were a bookseller in the making. You were a genuine bookseller in the making. You've just touched around in every little sector and area, and it sort of prepared you for this now, I'm assuming.
Yeah. A lot of it has informed many of my current practice, that's for sure.
That's great. So I'm just going to shake things up a little bit and ask you, what is your go-to genre when you're reading?
Well, I'm a feminist science fiction reader. That's where my home and my heart is. We have a local feminist science fiction convention here in Madison. It's called WisCon, and it's been around about as long as our store has. And I've been involved with WisCon for many years as well. I helped run it a couple of years, and I've been involved in various ways on the programming committee and everything.
Right.
Okay. So that's where I've made a lot of connections with authors and readers and book people, basically, that are in this particular niche genre. And nowadays, I'm lucky enough to serve on the board for the Tiptree Award. So I'm always keeping my eyes peeled for feminist science fiction.
For feminist science fiction. Okay, so that means you prefer fiction over nonfiction, then?
Yeah, for sure. I also have a toddler, so I'm very opinionated about children's books these days, too.
Okay. Are you reading anything right now?
The one that I finished fairly recently, it's actually a reread, and I feel bad that I'm mentioning it because it's not quite out yet, but you should all look for it if you're feminist science fiction fans. It's called Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, and it's coming from Tor.com, and it's basically the elevator pitch is it's lesbian necromancers in space, and it is that and more. It's just full of feelings and hilarious and gut-wrenching and just very, very visceral fun, knocking around in space with some gays if you really need that in your life, which I always do.
Oh, no, that's awesome. So now we have a book recommendation. It's Gideon and the Ninth?
Gideon the Ninth, yep.
Okay. Do you know when it's forthcoming?
Oh, God, let me look it up. I think it's changed a couple times, so I hesitate to mention.
No, it's okay. It's good. I actually like looking forward to
like
books.
It's coming in September
September.
2019.
Okay, so that's a great book. It sounds amazing to look forward to. So I'm actually excited a bit now. I do read a lot of feminist driven novels. I will admit I'm lacking in the science fiction department. So now you've kind of sold me on this one. I'm thinking like, wait.
What is your favorite book lately?
Oh, Jesus, my favorite book lately. That's a tough one. I finished, and I think it's my favorite book so far, is Gingerbread by Helen Oyeyemi. I just finished that one. I know a lot of reviews. Yeah, some reviews are saying it's weird, they don't get it. There's a mix of reviews online. That's what I've been seeing anyway. But I absolutely loved it. It felt like, a bedtime story, a fairy tale in a way, but not really that cheesy. It wasn't weird. I love the living dolls aspect in it. I know it's not.
Yeah, that's great.
But no, that was my favorite.
My other favorite, if you want like a serious literature recommendation, is On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong.
Ooh. Yep, you're the second person to recommend that one to me.
Oh my God, it's probably the best book I've read in 10 years. I mean,
wow.
in terms of its just like literary quality, its impact, just like its particular quality of vulnerability,
right,
and incredible writing. That is an astonishing book.
Okay, so now I have to get it.
It's really, really intense, though.
No, but now I have to get it because I swear you're the second person to recommend it to me on the podcast, and I've had 3 other people recommend it to me in real life. So it is clear I need to get my hands on this book.
I know. I think it comes out in June, so you're close. I'm not sure,
No, of course not.
Where you are, but yeah.
I'll keep my eye out for it for sure, but no, now I'm like, okay, so now I have 2 books from you, but Ocean Vuong, you're the second person, so it is clear I definitely need to get this book.
Mm-hmm.
So shifting back to the bookstore, what would you say is your biggest challenge, but also the thing you love the most about being an independent bookstore owner? What do you love, but also what's a challenge?
Sure. Well, I mean, we bought the store in July, so we're still in our first year of owning it. I bought it with my coworker Wes, who is shy and doesn't like being on podcasts, so I'm the sort of ombudsman for the store.
Okay.
And we have a co-owner, Patrick Rothfuss, who's a fantasy author.
Right.
Who's involved because I met him 10 years ago, and we've been friends.
Right.
And he had a pile of money, and he wanted the store to keep going, so he helped us out with it.
That's amazing.
But Wes and I are the ones who run it.
Right.
So for me, like learning how to juggle paying bills and cash flow and
right, of
the
course,
kind of like boring businessy stuff, and making sure that taxes are getting paid appropriately, and finding a decent accountant and that kind of thing. All the money stuff is like
a challenge.
The stuff that causes me the most stress. Although our store has been very we've had a great run so far, and the store has been doing well.
That's good.
For us and since us. So knock on wood, at least.
I'm knocking for you.
Scraping,
Absolutely. But what do you love the most?
For me, like having. I didn't even think it would be this way, but having a little bit of an edge of I can do things that will benefit people in the community, and like if something cool comes up that I think would be a good collaborative project with other organizations and groups, like we can just go ahead and do it, and I don't have to just like justify it to an owner who
of course,
our former owners wanted to retire and they were kind of checked out. They didn't want to spend a lot of time developing new stuff, so having that power and great responsibility has been kind of fun and exciting for me.
No, I can imagine.
We've been working with some wonderful orgs. We work with Books to Prisoners, a couple of Books to Prisoners groups.
Yes.
So we help them get the books that various inmates in prisons and jails around the country are looking for. We also work with the Madison Reading Project. So that's a local organization, and their kind of thing that they do is get children's books for kids, and then they give them straight to children in underserved, mostly minority communities around the area.
Right.
And then they have books in their home libraries, which research shows is the best way to help improve literacy,
Yep.
especially
Absolutely.
in those underserved communities. So, yeah, it's been really wonderful to be able to work with those groups and supporting things like there's a queer youth book club that we help. We've kind of underwritten some funds for them, and they have a queer youth book club, and they ask us for recommendations for books for their kids to read.
No, that's amazing. Yep.
Yeah.
That's really great. And I mean, what else, is there that to love more than having, the ability to, support these different groups and organizations and just, helping the greater community. I mean, there's honestly, that in itself is just amazing. And I'm happy that you have the opportunity to do that and that you find so much joy from it, because I know all these groups, all the people, all the children that are benefiting from it, I know for a fact they're loving it and they're truly appreciative.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's wonderful having like the kind of positive feedback loop of being able to support orgs that support us. And
right, for sure.
It's been good for us for business too. Like people are like, oh, we heard about you, at this event or because of our volunteering with this group or whatever. So
right.
Yeah, it's a great way to be part of a community, and that's really what we're here to do.
Absolutely, absolutely. So the fact that you've been involved in the book industry, you've interned at publishers, you've been in this bookstore before you officially started running it yourself. What changes would you say you've seen, in just the bookstore business, the publishing business, and just everything books over the past couple of years? Just tell me a few.
So many things.
I know, but just the first few that come to mind. What do you think of?
Well, it's, honestly, things have been getting much better for independent bookstores. And just publishing in general, I think, is starting to figure a few things out and get with the times. When I started working at the bookstore, it was like 2007.
Right.
And we had a big economic dump in 2008.
Yep.
And that's when, bookstores were dropping like flies around then. So I was like kind of occasionally worried about whether I would have a job in a few months,
Of course.
But luckily Sandy was just so shrewd and great at what she does. And she kept the store going and made some smart moves and has actually been able to grow the business. And we're trying to continue with that. But in terms of publishing, like, there've been a lot, like I'm on Twitter, I follow the industry there. I'm not too much of a commentator there most of the time, but I've seen a lot more discussion, frank and open discussion. If not perfect, at least there's discussion happening around race and diversity and like kind of the hashtag own voices and
Yep. It's also a thing on Instagram as well. Yep. It's trending right now. I'm happy, like you mentioned, it might not be perfect conversation, but the conversation is happening because you have own voices authors now. You have own voices reviewers, people who are finally seeing themselves in literature for the first time ever. And that in itself is amazing. So now they can share their thoughts on books that were written by people like them
about people like them.
Exactly. So I agree. That's a big change and a big shift. And again, it's not perfect, but it's definitely positive, So I agree with you. I'm so happy that is happening right now for sure.
The other thing too is I think it helps. I try to gently encourage parents and adults to consider books that feature children that are different from the child they're buying for, because that really helps build empathy. And
oh, absolutely.
Like if you have, I try to bring in books into my child's home library that mostly feature kids of color, so that's a normal, not only thing that he's type of person that he sees frequently, but also a type of person that he identifies with. Even if that's kind of subtle, it's still something that as an adult, I try to think about, and I hope that will help him be a more empathetic, thoughtful participant in today's society, you know?
No, I understand for sure, because as an adult, reading about people who are different from me has allowed me to feel a lot more empathetic towards them. It's not that...
There are studies that show that, like, your anecdotal evidence is backed up by science.
So I 100%. I mean, some books have made me cry. Some books have made me really think about how I would prejudge an individual that I'm meeting for the first time or I haven't met. Just because you saw something on the TV or the news or a friend said, you have this perception. But when you read and someone, whether fictional or not, is giving an account, it really creates a lot more empathy, a lot more understanding. So as a result, you're not so quick to judge. You take a step back. So I agree. And I mean, I love that concept of gifting books to your children and even your adult friends that are different from their normal read or, different from who they are as individuals and friends that they associate with, because how else are they going to know? Especially if they don't socialize with people who are different from themselves.
Exactly.
So it's like, how?
There's a concept I ran across at one point that was talking about books as mirrors versus windows. And I think we need both. So like, a book that might be a mirror might be like the one you were describing that your friend found that represented her family,
right,
in a way that she had never seen. And especially for people who are in marginalized communities or underheard voices, like, you don't see yourself or hear people like you very much. And so when you find literature that does reflect you in that way, that's really important to you. And also, like we're kind of talking about, like, that book is primarily for people within that group, maybe, but it's also helpful for everyone to consider reading it too, whether or not they belong to that group.
No, that's a great perspective.
Other approaches might be like a window, where maybe you're reading a book that's about someone that's not like you, and it could be the same book that's a mirror for someone else, and for you it's a window.
No, I agree.
See into the home and the life of another person
and another family, and what they have to live with, their challenges, their triumphs. I agree. It's definitely, you're right. It can either be a mirror or a window, and I definitely think I'm going to be stealing that analogy from you, because it's really good. No, it's good. I really like it, and I think it's a great way going forward, especially when selecting new books to read.
Yeah,
for sure. Okay. I'm going to wrap up with the last question I tend to normally ask.
Sure.
What advice would you give someone who is interested in opening an independent bookstore in their town?
Oh, wow. Gosh. I guess try and talk to other bookstore owners, especially if there are others in your town. We try to be, friendly with every other bookstore in our town and consider ourselves part of an ecosystem with them. Because especially this day and age, we all have enough negative energy coming from Amazon and Barnes & Noble and just like people who are like, well, whoever shops in bookstores. The truth is a lot of people do. And we get people every day in our store who say, oh my God, a real bookstore. We used to have one of these in our, little town, but we don't anymore. And I've heard of a lot of bookstores opening in smaller towns or in just areas of other towns that haven't had a bookstore in a while, or have only had like one type of bookstore but not other types. Like maybe if there's a Barnes & Noble there, maybe you might consider a used bookstore. Like try and find a part of a niche that's going to serve the community that you're in appropriately.
So find a niche that's going to serve.
Don't expect that you can just sit around and read on the job, because I don't think I have ever read anything except book reviews and now spreadsheets on the job.
So you're not going to be able to read on the job, guys. You're just not. Oh, Gretchen, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciated your perspective on a lot of things bookish. And are there any last words that you want to say about A Room of One's Own?
you can find us on Twitter. We're at Room of One's Own. And I'm on Twitter, too. If you want to follow me, I'm at Gretchening.
Awesome.
So,
nope, that sounds great. And we love to be social, so I will definitely leave your links in the show details. Again, Gretchen, thank you so much.
Sure.
All right, everyone, that's it for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. And special thanks to Gretchen Treu from A Room of One's Own Bookstore for coming on the show. I will leave all the links for A Room of One's Own Bookstore in the show details so you can connect with them. Don't forget to follow Biblio Finder and Biblio Happy Hour on social media and sign up for our newsletters. To listen to full episodes of our podcast, get behind-the-scenes content, weekly business updates, perks, and more, head on over to patreon.com/bibliofinder. And wherever you're listening, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. When you do this, you're helping us to reach a larger audience, and it is one way you can help us to put independent bookstores at the forefront and make Biblio Finder plus the show a success. Thank you so much for listening. I look forward to talking to you in our next show.